Leave
Yes.
meeting. Leave meeting. Leave meeting. Oh.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to another jolly SDS webinar, where and welcome to our viability expert, John Stevens. Welcome once again. We absolutely love your presentations and everything you bring to the table for our consultancy and for all of our clients. Our viability expert in-house, Andrew Markham, and head of our consultancy. Hello, good morning, Andrew. And
good morning, Christopher.
We have once again the absolute pleasure of our technical genius, Paul Christensen, and Paul understands our software inside out. So we are all on hand to help you navigate multi-tenure mayhem.
Good morning, everybody. Mayhem internal, I think, just a minute ago. That's good.
So a few things about, if you're joining us for the first time on the Zoom webinar, a few things about it. We have a Q&A section. Now, the great thing about this Q&A section is that you can upvote other questions, you can comment, and we can all interact on there with much greater sort of interactive abilities. So please do keep the questions coming in. I know there will be quite a lot on this. The idea is to sort of get our brains together and really go through it all properly. So we will be diverting to questions quite a lot throughout this. So please don't feel bad about interrupting. We want the interruption. We want an engaging dialogue. Right, so it looks like we've got most people here, and let's go to John Stevens. And John, would you like to just give us a brief overview of what you'd like to take us through?
Did Andrew want to say something first?
I was just going to say good morning as well. So I was just going to say what we're trying to do on this is a quick kind of display PowerPoint presentation from John, and then actually ask if there's any questions that come from that, obviously answer it. And then we're going to go with me and Paul, going to go into the software and just show you structurally how to set up these different tenure types, and then the impact that they could be. And if there's any questions that you want to pose to us about mixed tenure in Proval, then let's ask the question and we'll try and answer it and show you if we can, if it's simple, or any burning questions you have. And then perhaps Paul can tell us a little bit about moving to the future of Proval and moving into this one cash flow, the dynamics of that a little bit.
Okay, great. So John, take us through from the top.
Okay, let's I just got to share my screen, and where are we? PowerPoint.
Our cameras off.
Pardon?
Do we want our cameras off, Christopher? Is that what you
No, keep them on. That's all. Just this is engaging. We're all here to talk.
Okay, can you see this screen?
Yeah, blank.
Blank.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see the tale of two cash flows?
Go back to IT.
Pardon?
Well, yeah, blank screen in Proval. Go back to IT. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
Can I start?
Yeah.
I'm going to take everybody back to the simplest of principles in terms of looking at viability. So this is what we use when you do training and consultancy with people, just to get over and the basics of viability and start the conversation. So it's very simplistic, but the elements in here are what Paul and Andrew are going to talk about later. So we can't make it any simpler than this in terms of how a viability goes together. And there are basically two cash flows that build a viability: the short-term development cash flow, that includes the basic ingredients. I told you it was going to be basic: the land, the build, the fees. So these are your basic ingredients in your short-term development cash flow. And if you're building a lot of homes, you might borrow the money from the bank, and therefore you may have an attached interest cost to the cost of the development. All these things added together become a total scheme cost. I'm teaching you to suck eggs. This is all can be done on the back of an envelope. Why are you taking such a simple route? Well, I'm taking such a simple route to try and explain a little bit later on some of the complexities of affordable housing viability. So this route, the land, the build, the fees, can be written on the back of an envelope. Whether you're a private developer, a affordable housing developer, you want the same basic ingredients. Because we work in housing, we love an abbreviation, so we call total scheme cost TSC. And this is the private sector model. I look at the costs of production becoming the total scheme cost. I then take away the cost of my sales, and the difference between my costs and my sales is my profit. That on the back of an envelope is the private sector model. Now, the affordable sector model, we are starting to incorporate some sales, whether it's shared ownership or outright sale. And we in the affordable sector are able to gain some subsidy. Sometimes internal subsidy is applied from within our organisation, but most frequently we gain external subsidy from the likes of Homes England or the Mayor of London. So we have our total scheme cost, take away any sales we might achieve, take away any subsidy, and what we're left with is a long-term loan. And this is the difference between the affordable sector and the private sector. We don't sell everything we develop. We actually hold on to it because that is our social purpose. It's to hold on to properties and rent them out at affordable rates. So we actually carry the cost of production, this long-term loan of building these homes, into another cash flow. And that's why we call it the tale of two cash flows, because we've got the short-term development cash flow when we're building, and when we finish our homes, we actually move that cost, that long-term loan, into a second cash flow, sometimes called the management cash flow, very often called the long-term cash flow. And there, in year one, we actually transfer our long-term loan. So year one is defined in the long-term cash flow by the year of the first handover of the first unit. That starts the whole cash flow. And there sits our long-term loan, and attached to it is obviously its own interest, because we haven't paid the loan off. Therefore, the bank will still want interest attached to that loan. Now, how are we going to pay off that loan? In the simplest example, we collect rent from the homes we've built, and we collect the gross rent. Unfortunately, from the gross rent, we actually have to deduct our landlord costs, our management, maintenance, voids and bad debts. And we have to perhaps think about service costs and service charge, more of which I'll come onto later. Once we've taken the gross rent and deducted our landlord costs of managing the home, we're left with something that we get fixated with, which is the net rent, or the pure rent that we've got to pay off the loan. So once we've deducted our landlord costs, it's the net rent that we then use to go, and usually this is the model used by most housing associations. Usually they prioritize paying the annual interest first, and if there's anything left over from the net rent, it eats away at the loan. And this is called the overdraft method that most housing associations use. Some local authorities use what's called an annuity method, where it's like a fixed payment eating away at the loan and the interest. But most housing associations have a rolling loan facility, and they're interested in meeting the interest first. Pardon the pun there. So this process, which I kind of configure or think of as like housekeeping, that I've actually got my gross salary coming in, I take away my standing orders, and whatever I've got left, I try and pay the mortgage with. Think of it like that. And we go through a cycle in the long-term cash flow of 100 years of this loan process going on. So whatever happened in year one, the loan might go up or go down, the interest might go up or go down, depending on how much we've actually paid off in year one. So year two, this whole process starts again. We collect year two's rent. It might have inflated, and we've got our landlord costs going on. Now, this process goes on year on year on year in the long-term cash flow, and your organization chooses a sweet spot over 100 years. And because this cash flow runs in our software for 100 years, and decided by your organization's long-term business plan, you usually choose a point around about year 40 at the moment. Most organizations are choosing year 40. When I started out, it was year 25, then it moved to year 30. Now most people are at year 40. Some have moved to year 60. but it's decided by your long-term business plan. And what you want to know, am I plus or minus, perhaps at year 40 on my loan? And to do that, because you actually need to use something called net present value to understand future money. Because by the time we get to looking at 40 years down the line, our software will have added interest and inflation over the 40 years. And so the monies at year 40 or whatever year you choose will be different to monies seen at year 1. And to bring future money back to present value, we use something called net present value, or NPV. And that will have a NPV discount period. In this case, I'm talking about a 40-year, let the loan run for 40 years and see if we pay it off. So I'm talking about an NPV discount period of 40 years. And I'd need to understand a discount rate. And I would probably get that from my finance director, and he would probably look at what is the interest on this long-term loan, and he would probably align my NPV discount rate close to that annual interest rate. It might have a slight margin on top for risk factors. And these days you can have different periods and different rates for different tenures in Proval. So you can actually ask for probably your social rent to go on for a bit longer, and maybe your market rent to be reviewed slightly shorter period. So you can have different NPV discount rates and periods for different tenures. But that's a discussion with your finance director and about your long-term business plan. So what most organizations are interested in is, how am I sitting after 40 years or whatever my period is of activity? And so it takes the future money. This is what our software does. It takes a prediction of the future money based on rent and management and maintenance costs, and it returns it to the same point in time that we started the long-term development cash flow. So it brings monies that have been inflated to year 40 or whatever sweet spot your organization has chosen, and it brings that future money back to its same value at year 1 when the properties were first handed over. And that, in a nutshell, is the simplest way I can explain what's going on inside a viability model and what's going on inside Proval. And Andrew will actually show you a scheme built out with the land, the build, the fees, and with the standard assumptions for management and maintenance, how successful that scheme is into the future with a future life, which is what your organization wants to know. Your organization with a social purpose is building homes, not selling all of them. It might sell a few these days, but basically it wants to know, when I build these homes, when do they pay for themselves? And in line with my business plan, how is this helping my business overall? Is it a negative scheme? Is it a positive scheme? So that's the simplest explanation of viability. Now, what I'm talking about here is strategy and opportunity. And hopefully you have a board on a firm foundation, or whether it's a cabinet or a committee, but you have some decision makers, and they are the board, and they put together your development strategy for you. So your decisions about what you develop are based on firm foundations. And this strategy, this development strategy, will tell you who you're going to build homes for, what tenures you're going to use, where they're going to be, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to afford it, i.e. what facilities have you got financially. And all this who, what, where, when, how, which forms part of your strategy, actually supports your business plan. And it's your business plan which holds all your financial projects and really defines your business. But although we get a perfect structure in terms of how we set up our strategy and our business plan, I know we work in the organic world of development opportunities. So we as development people take this defined structure and we work in an organic world of development opportunities. And we actually have to look at these opportunities as they arise, whether we find them ourselves, whether they're recommended by board members, whether they're recommended by senior staff, etc. we actually need to then go out and look at these and grow these development opportunities. And some of them might be positive projects to add to our business plan, positive NPVs. Some of them might be negative projects where, for our social purpose, the rent that we receive doesn't actually cover the costs of building it over the period of time we're looking at. And we've got to be careful as development people as to how quickly we add these schemes into the business plan of our business. And this is called program management. So how many projects can we hold at one point in time inside our business plan? And are they positive NPV projects? Are some of them negative? Can we carry negative ones? So in our organic world of development opportunities, it's not quite as clear cut as perhaps the board and the development strategy outlines, but it provides a structure from which we can work and put projects into the business plan. Now, the other factor that comes along is the program. How quickly are these projects being added? And of course, I would advise use something like SQL, which is one of our software products, to actually manage your program of projects. So you can see what state my program is actually in, and can I afford all these different projects coming in. Now, the additional factor we've got going on in the affordable sector is that your finance director is asked to stress test your business plan on a regular basis. So your finance director, to receive grant for the organisation, is asked by the regulator or Homes England to stress test your business plan, because they don't want to give grant to organisations that aren't sustainable. So they ask your finance director to look at your business plan and say, what if costs change radically? What if income reduced radically? Are you still a sustainable business? So your business plan is also stress tested. And it might need some additional support, and that's why stress testing takes place. So when do we view at SDS that a scheme is viable? Well, I've mentioned the development strategy, that's the top. We might look at cost to value, and that comes out of the appraisal because it's got an asterisk against it. Can it repay its loan? Can it add value to the organisation? Is there any internal subsidy required? Is that subsidy available? It doesn't tip over the business plan, and have we looked at all the risks? So this would be our general sort of checklist of when is a scheme viable. So Proval is all about 4 elements within here. Cost, it can tell you the cost of value. It can look at when the loan's repaid. It can look at what sort of value it may be adding to the organisation, and it looks at whether the subsidy, the required subsidy, is available to make the Proval work. So our viability software model, as you may know, uses templates where we could have the assumptions about your organizational loan rates, determined by your finance director. But we also set aside a library of different tenures. And today we're going to be talking about first homes and adding that in to our tenure library. So our tenure library could have social rent, affordable rent, shared ownership, and they can all have different management and maintenance allowances inside of them. And to create the appraisal, we take our template with our loan rates on it, and we drag onto that the unit types that we want to create in the appraisal. And that's what we're going to be doing shortly. But what I was asked to do was actually talk about the new dwelling type that we've been offered by the government, which is first homes. So what is first homes? You may have had some discussion about it. So first homes really is a discounted market sale home. And the government guidance at the moment is saying we want this to be at least 25% of any affordable housing required by a Section 106 on a large site. So we see it as discounted market sale, and it has to be of appropriate size and price for first-time buyers in the area. It can't just be the big homes and sold at a discount. So it has to be appropriate for first-time buyers in the area. It's the housing developer who takes the hit on its discount, the reduction on sales price. He's taking that hit, or they're taking that hit, as part of the affordable provision. The discount is in perpetuity, so that means it's actually registered at the land registry and kept for any future resale of that property. Interestingly, because they're talking about a discount at around 30% of the market, it makes it exempt from SIL. Now, there has to also be an eligible purchaser who's eligible to buy this home, and that can be subject to the local planning criteria, local planning authority. There are some government criteria, which I'll show you in a minute, but they can be tweaked by the local planning authority. So the discount starts at 30% reduction on open market sales, but that again can be tweaked by your local planning authority, which I'll show you in a minute. There is currently a price cap after the discount has been applied. It only applies to the first sale, not subsequent sales. So if the first purchaser moves property and wants to sell the property, the cap doesn't apply, but the agreed discount does apply. So the property can go up in value, but it would still have the original discount attached to its resale. That's what I'm trying to get over here. So the cap, these are the caps at the moment, but they can again be changed or adapted by the local planning authority. In terms of eligibility, the government have stipulated there for first-time buyers, and they're saying that there's an income maximum of £90,000 in Greater London or up to £80,000 outside. Now, again, some of these can be tweaked by your local planning authority. They're saying you've also got to have a mortgage plan to fund a minimum of 50% of the discounted purchase. So you've got to basically have a mortgage already organised. And this is maybe where some sales teams can actually help with mortgage lenders. And there's also, the government have stipulated there's got to be a get out of jail clause for the mortgage lenders. So a mortgagee exclusion clause. What does that mean? Well, in the event of a repossession, that the bank could sell the unit on the open market, but they then got to pay some compensation to the local authority to the value of the discount. So that basically is a safety net for the mortgage lenders that the government had to put in place. Sorry for my mouse popping up there. So first homes, what can the local authorities do at their discretion? In some areas, it's called a neighbourhood planning group, but mostly it's a planning authority. We have to evidence any changes or tweaks we want to do regionally or locally by evidence that's part of our local plan. Now, the government recognised you could increase the discount on the market value, but you've got to evidence this. And once you've moved the discount, that is actually fixed for the resale down the line, basically in years to come. So whatever you discount it by at the first point of sale carries on into the future attached to that property. That local authorities or local planning authorities can lower price caps. So we saw earlier there were price caps, how high you could go. This has to be demonstrated again by local evidence. Likewise, the local planning authority can change the income caps, so they can be lowered as demonstrated by local evidence. But you've still got to be able to allow a 95% loan to mortgage value. Loan to value mortgage. The local planning authority could put in a local connection test, whether that's employment. It's specifically trying to encourage key workers, and there is guidance that what is a key worker in the government supporting document. Key worker is any person who works in a profession considered essential for the functioning of a local area. So that's pretty wide. Timescale with first homes. Well, if you've got your local plan underway or at publication stage by last month, you haven't got to reflect first homes. So basically, if you're close to finishing your local plan, they allowed you to finish it. However, if you're doing new development plans, they should be taking account of first homes. And sites are exempt from including first homes, so that's large sites with house developers, if they've got outline or full planning by the 28th of December this year, or you've got a pre-app determined by March 2022. So some people might be rushing towards something, or some people might be embracing the opportunity of first homes. I'd be interesting to hear what's coming from the sector, from people attending this webinar. The government is going to publish a template of planning obligations for the local planning authority to actually add into the 106. So what the government are basically saying, we'll give you some standard notes to add to your 106 about first homes. And a question I've got is about record keeping. Somebody somewhere, if this is actually agreed as an affordable homes tenure, which the government's saying it is, somewhere somebody's got to keep a record of what properties were sold for, who it was sold to, were they eligible. There must be some form of audit trail on first homes, which I'll be interested to see evolve. Presumably it sits with the local planning authority, but I'd be interested to hear some comments on that. Now, a final part of what I'm presenting this morning is a quick reminder, because we've also not only seen first homes, but we've also seen a new model of shared ownership come forward, where people can actually start at very low percentages and staircase upwards. And also we've seen that the first 10 years of the new shared ownership model has to be maintained by the provider. And so we're seeing those sort of maintenance costs coming into shared ownership appraisals, which we haven't had to before. So we actually had a quick look at the new model lease, and we felt that there was a reminder that was very useful to people at this point in time. And it might be something that you're already doing, but it's worthwhile reminding people, I think. And it's about the service charge. So we looked at the model lease, and this is an extract from it. And what we're pointing out is that management and maintenance costs should be wrapped up in a service charge or a service cost. So think about it when you're putting your shared ownership units through Proval. Am I showing a management cost in the management row? No, you should be showing it in the service cost. And this is what the lease actually says, that management and maintenance of the building should be wrapped up in the service cost, not in the management row of Proval. And interestingly and positively, if you actually move, if you are putting it in the management row, but you move it to the service cost area, it will actually improve your NPV, because service costs are usually met by the charge, and that's what this is all about. And if you remove a management cost from the management area, it won't be a deduction on the gross rent, which is what we started talking about. So by moving, I don't know if some of you are doing this at the moment, but what we sometimes see is people assume the shared ownership management cost should be in the management row. No, it should be in the service cost row. And that's what the lease says. You will actually improve the NPV of your shared ownership. So I've rambled from a very simplistic start to very detailed areas that could actually help you. But I think this is where I need to actually stop sharing and go back to the guys on the webinar.
Thank you, John. That was great. We had some really great comments here. Andrew says, can we please have this? Everyone in the webinar who has attended will receive a copy of the recording and the slides. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this for you. Right. So now there was a question here in the chat. If you could all please put your questions in the Q&A so they can be upvoted, I'd be grateful. And it was something that It was from Vikesh Patel. If the appraisal period is 40 years, I'm presuming that it will only take the first 40 years of the 100-year long-term cash flow, to which Paul replied. Paul, would you like to just expand on that?
Yes, the long-term cash, the NPV discount term will determine effectively how long the NPV, and the NPV calculation starts at the handover of the unit. So from the first handover, it will go, if you've set the discount term for 40 years, then the NPV that's there effectively is the first 40 years of the long-term cash flow as an NPV. John.
And what I would say is the long-term cash flow in Proval, if you look at it, will actually run for 100 years. So yes, it will give you the NPV result at whatever period you ask it for, perhaps year 40, but it will actually show you how that project performs over 100 years. So you can select different periods, but you need to dovetail with your finance director's business plan, because he's set up your organization to build lots of projects and he wants it to be sustainable into the future. So sorry, I've rambled a bit there, but basically, right.
Yeah. And to go with that, John, if you're using the overdraft loan method, it will goal seek and tell you how long it will take to pay that. So the loan repaid year is determined by the amount of money available each year. So in other words, all income will go to pay for the loan. And as long as it's not beyond 100 years, because the software doesn't go beyond 100, it'll just be blank. It will tell you when the loan would be repaid. If you're using the annuity method or any other loan type that has a very specific time frame, then the repaid year will be that time frame. You then have to monitor other types of hurdles, like if you, let's for argument's sake say you said I want a 40-year annuity, you then need to monitor the surpluses and deficits at year 40, which the software will tell you. But that's in addition to paying the loan off. So if you had a deficit at year 40, effectively the project's not able to meet the loan in reality. The overdraft method is a far superior way of looking at it, because it says all income will go towards paying the loan. How long will it take? And it will then tell you how long it will take.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Andrew, did you have anything to add there?
No, but as just going on from what Paul and John said there, we would always encourage, I think, for development people to understand, does this work for you? And what is required to make it work is the overdraft will probably be a more simpler way to view it. Okay.
I'm sure there are some participants that have some questions about what do we do in Proval when it comes to, do I need a new product type for first homes?
Yeah.
And Andrew, if you'd be kind enough to demonstrate how to put that tenure type in, I think it's useful to have a different tenure type. Effectively, a first homes is an outright sale unit, but there are quite a few caveats to go with it, as John has outlined them all. It would probably be easier in your appraisals to see outline which ones are first homes and which ones are outright sale units. So Andrew, if you can just show them how to set it up. I hope we have some administrators with us.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm just going to show you that I've got units in here under the rented banner, unless there's any questions from the other subject matters we've just been talking about.
Yeah, we were having an open Q&A on John's presentation before we went into this.
Yeah, I'm noting time, but just if there's any other further questions on what John has said, then we'll answer them. If not, then we'll show you.
Okay, yeah, there is. We've got David Ashton here. Hello, David. Great to hear from you. Andrew, if you could just quickly sort of unshare your screen so we can go back to the gallery mode. So this question from David, does the issue of allocating management and maintenance fees to service costs apply for all tenure types or just shared ownership?
Just shared ownership in this instance, and that's decided by the description in the model lease that we've got. Certainly your affordable rented products should show a distinct management cost and a distinct maintenance cost, and they wouldn't go into the service costs. However, if you're doing something like market rent, you've then got to consider how you're setting your service costs for your market renters. But for most affordable tenures, the management and maintenance fees need to be shown because they are your landlord costs. It's just this specific shared ownership element saying you should wrap up your landlord costs inside a service cost stroke charge. So hopefully that answers David's question.
Okay, thank you. And Vikesh Patel, thank you, Vikesh. Thanks also. Do we have differences between flats and houses, or is that an internal decision?
In terms of what? Is that in terms of service charges? Or?
Yes, in terms of management and maintenance fees to service costs.
Of course, you will have different costs in terms of different size of property and different sorts of property. With flats, you will have a communal area, perhaps of stairs that maybe need redecorating, etc. Whereas with a house, you wouldn't have any communal areas. What we're starting to see, though, is that management companies are coming into large developments, and therefore houses actually start to build up service costs because they have to contribute to the management company. So please don't think that houses don't have service charges or costs. Think about how is there a management company. So I would think quite, and I think service costs and service charges are a real area for focus and scrutiny.
Okay, thank you, John. Anything else to add on that one? Anyone? Paul, Andrew?
No.
Okay.
Right. So, should we show you how we kind of
a couple more questions here, Andrew, at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, cool.
Okay, so Paula, hello, thank you. I hope I've pronounced that right. Please tell me if not. If the service charge income is less than a service charge cost, does this impact NPV?
Yes, well, because it's effectively a cost to the organization. So if the organization is paying out more than they're recovering, then there's a net loss to the organization. So yes, it will affect the NPV. It's going to affect your net income because it's got to be deducted from the gross income, and you're paying it out as a service cost. Most organizations would recover at least that cost as part of the service charge. But bear in mind that any costs of running the project or the homes after development, somebody has to pay, and if it's going to affect the income from the organization, of course it's going to be a deduction on gross rent. So yes, it will affect the NPV.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose, you know, in the years going past, we used to do social rents, then we generally left out service costs out of an appraisal because they were cost neutral. So and as we've been doing kind of obviously more affordable rents, it's been a highlight of what the service costs are and what we're actually getting back. So now we've got a product that we're actually now part selling, or you know, we've now, where does that fit? And I suppose it's again another highlight of making sure the impact of that and seeing where exactly does it go, and then what are we recovering back. So if they are net for each other, net zero, you can leave it out of the appraisal, can't you?
Although I would say it's better to put it in so you've demonstrated you know what the costs are, and it also impacts on the affordability assessment of what the household could afford for shared ownership. But that's a bit
there is a caveat that goes with that. if because of the way Proval works, if you're doing something that's been sold, in other words, like an outright sale unit, the cash flow effectively is nil. In other words, you've had all the income. There is no ongoing income. Would that house or that homeowner, even though it even might be a freehold, would be liable for an estate charge? I would have assumed yes, but there's no means of recovering that estate charge inside Proval once you've got no income. So if you're doing outright sale, everybody, please make sure you don't put in the estate charge. That would be an external, only the way the quirk that Proval has. I know we are looking at this in future versions of Proval so that you could have an ongoing service line. It's something that we are looking at the moment, but there would be yet another method of having a state of charge, if that's what we want to call it, and you would then be able to put in an estate income from those people. It's not something that's there at the moment. So if you're doing outright sale, please don't put in the allowances because there's no monies to pay for them. When it comes to first homes, I'm not quite sure. I'm assuming we're going to deal the same with first homes. because effectively that's an outright sale unit.
And I think
lesser value.
What you want to do is actually demonstrate putting a first homes onto an appraisal, don't you? So
yes.
Yeah, so should we do that? Should we do that? And then Chris interrupt if there's any kind of further questions.
No, we're good for now. Let's go to that, Andrew. Over to you.
Right. Okay. So Paul, we're gonna. Hopefully you can see my screen, everyone, now. And I've loaded up actually these positions, but if we kind of take that away from the screen, and then Paul will go to simply administration.
If you don't have administration access, anybody on the team here, you need to talk to your administrator. They need to add in a new first homes product type. This is our approach anyway.
Yeah. And then
go to the Andrew, if you go to administration and go to product types, we can just show what you've done.
Yeah. So
today.
Yeah, what we're saying here is that Paul, me and Paul were discussing that would you have another tenure or would you put it under outright sale? So
no, I would have another tenure.
Okay.
So you need to create a folder for it.
So yeah, so like rent to buy, you'd have another folder for that, and then outright sale kind of you obviously
first homes as a separate one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then we go to a product types. He says
it's coming.
So it's Christmas. Right,
yeah.
There we go. So
just show where you've put it in, Andrew, at the top.
Right, here we go. So we've got first homes here. Yeah. So we simply just add a product at the top right there, and it comes at the bottom. But I've already done it as well, so I'll take that out. And you can see first homes here. And then we have the different options, don't we?
That one should be unticked there, Andrew, the commercial one. It shouldn't be a commercial because it's a residential.
Yeah. So first homes.
That's it. And the next one is about rent. I know we have a really odd description there. This is about allowing it to have rent. A first home shouldn't have rent on it because it is an outright sale unit.
Yeah.
I think it's worth explaining to people that allow 0% sale, which is a head twist, is we've used that horrible terminology because that's the Dutch translation for one of our Dutch clients. What in simple English terms it means, is this product a rented product? Yes or no?
We sell Proval in the Netherlands, and when they changed the desktop to a Netherlandic language, the whole of Proval changes to suit. It should be allowed as a shared ownership because effectively, you'll see now we're going to do a discount sale on it. So effectively, you need to have that ticked as well as the 100% sale.
Okay, so we've got that. We can tick off the, we don't need that. We don't need
those, no.
That's fine. So it's in there.
Andrew's chosen his own coloring there. If you don't choose a color, it will color itself anyway. So those of you who don't have colors listed there, just ignore it. You don't need to have it if you don't want to.
Lavender is kind of in full bloom at the moment, so I thought I'll choose that. That's very nice. Very apt. Puts a smile on everyone's face, apart from Paul. It's always good. And then we're always aim to please. And then we've got, obviously, it won't take effect until you close Proval down and reopen it. Yeah. Paul's always telling me that. Close it down, reopen it, and then it will be in there. Yeah.
Are you going to put a folder in your unit types?
Well, I would do, but I'm not going to do that now. But we will put a folder type in there and we call it first home.
This is what we're showing you here, everybody, is normally done by your administrator. So if you're not an administrator, please don't attempt it yourself. Please contact your Proval administrator to do it for you.
Yes. Or Paul. No, don't. No, don't.
Whoever your Proval administrator is.
Okay. So right, what should we do here? Let's go back here. I've got these two units and the rented, one unit of each, and actually I was going to keep them the same actually, so we can actually see the viability of it. We'll keep it 65. We'll keep them at a 2-bedroom unit like this, and we'll change all the titles for 2-bed just to show you we've got some basic information in here.
Number of persons.
Persons, yeah. Well, reporting wise, I'm not worried about it from this point of view. We've got the same 325 kind of value for these units. And we've got some standard NPV, 4%. We've got a discount rate of 4% as well. And we've got 45 years, and we've got some kind of management costs, service costs, standard kind of, you know, principles here across major pairs. So we've got all this, all the information in, and we're looking at the rents. The two different rents here, because I changed them when I was playing around with it. So I've got 750, and then we got 750. So these are the same. Yeah. And then, which I'm gonna do on mine, which you probably won't be able to do, is be able to change this to first homes. So this one, I've got the ability.
I want to interrupt Andrew there. This is actually bad practice that we're showing you there. For the purposes of demonstration, it's just to simplify the process.
So this is always good bad practice from me and Paul. I'm just simply changing this to first home. You would go back to your folder structure, open the unit types, and you would have first homes in here and pick it. And then structurally, it's correct with what you're doing. So you wouldn't have to do what I'm going to do now. Right. But just to kind of,
and most of you probably won't have access to do the change anyway.
Right. Okay.
The reason, let's just explain the reason there, Andrew. The reason for it is when you change the product type, the underlying assumptions will not change accordingly.
Well, the assumptions do change, but you need to. It still displays the values. That's what I think what Paul is saying. So the 325 this is now a product.
No, I'm talking about the underlying organization assumptions, like allowances and things, will not change.
Management and maintenance.
No, they will. Sorry. Okay. Right. Let's go for what we've got now. So we've got the same unit. The only thing we're going to look at is the market value. So we keep the market value the same. Yeah. Because we put it in there to get a cost to relationship, total scheme cost against market sales value. We've put those in anyway, so it's in there. If you had it blank, then you need to put it in there. Obviously, you know, you can do the kind of phasing timing of that, but we're not going to worry about that too much now. We've got the same MPV. It's going to ignore this because it's an in and out transaction, but it is there anyway, and it will display a result. Then we have got the position of what we're selling it at. So whether it's a 30% discount or 20% discount. So I'm just going to go with a 30% discount, and you can then see in this part what the actual value is.
There will not be staircasing.
Yeah. There'll be no staircasing, and hopefully most of you don't do the staircasing anyway on shared ownership, but it's there anyway. You can obviously do a delay, can't you? You could say this is going to take us a couple of months to get our paperwork in order and get selling it, and we can do the sales per month. So if you had obviously a number of units, you can then talk to your marketing department, sales department, and what is the flavor of how many do you think we're going to sell per month, and we can put that in there. That is all we need to do. And then, as you rightly said, we can then look at obviously the structure of these units will be then reducing, would have all these at 0, so they're not affecting the appraisal. Yeah. So here we go. We've got all the kind of management costs, maintenance costs, voids and bad debts we can take out.
Please do bear in mind that Andrew can do what he likes on here, and that comes with its own big frustration.
To the frustration of Paul, often, but from viability terms, you can quickly move things around and make sure you've got everything not in there. So we're not going to have any rent.
Use your rent picker, Andrew, and just change it to pounds and no value.
Yeah.
Please remember this, everybody. There is no rent on a first homes, even though you've set it at 70% sale. There is no rent. It's not terribly dissimilar to a shared equity unit where you're selling 80% and there's no rent.
Well, interesting enough, isn't it? Look, you can see the MPV of this, the value of it. Structurally, the same kind of unit. The costs are the same because I've done it as a square meter. And on my kind of capital costs here, you can see my acquisition is 20%, of the market sales value.
Which is the original value, isn't it, Andrew?
Yep, which is the original value. So that's proportioned correctly. I've gone down to my works cost, and I've structurally put that in already as a square meter price. And I've got some associated costs to it and contingency. So you can see here that the results of this scheme, one is giving me a £54,000 loss, and one is actually giving me a £52 surplus. So that's quite interesting on that example. So any questions on that from any audience participation?
Yep. So we've got Marta here. Hello, Marta. Very good to hear from you. Would it be possible to model the same unit as shared ownership for comparison?
No.
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
yes, but you have to call it a shared ownership. Don't call it a first homes.
Okay, so proper Blue Peter fashion. You can see on screen, we have the same units across each other, and we've got the various different MPV results here. Again, just structurally showing you what we're doing here. The same value, I believe. Okay, I've slightly changed those. Let me just go back 325. That's not going to affect that one, is it? But this one, sorry, 325 live model.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Right, here we go. So I've got 325 on that. 1 unit of each, 65 square meters, all 2 bedrooms. Yeah. We've got the same kind of MPV and period. And then we've got the 70% on here, which is 225. And then we've got 25%. You know, the audience can say if we want to show 10% and what the kind of rent would be over that period, but I've just gone for the standard 25%. Let's kind of start them at the same time. We'll look at the management cost now. So here is what we're saying the management cost would be. Let's get rid of that one. Don't know what's in there.
In the past, you might have put 150 as management. Yes. But then now it should be part of the service cost.
Yeah. So generally speaking, on a shared ownership unit here, we would put £150 or whatever you think in here, but we're not. And we're now saying the service cost on this is 120.
Andrew, would you open up the service cost row for me, please?
Yeah, sure.
And then if you highlight the 1200.
Yep.
And then if you go to the user comments, you can then put a comment about what that 1200 is made up of. So you can identify to somebody who's looking at the appraisal after you, and this invariably happens because it could be a few months since the last time you looked at the appraisal, and you could say the £1,200 is made up of £150 management fee, it's such and such a estate charge, and such a sinking fund portion, and there's a whole raft of stuff that can be part of that service cost. Of course, it's recovered as a service charge.
Yes. So we've got voids and bad debts. Most people put some voids and bad debts on to the shared ownership unit. Yeah.
John, would you put that in?
Voids and bad debts should be recoverable under the terms of the lease at the point of sale. So
Okay.
When somebody leaves, if they've been a bad resident not paying their shared ownership rent, you should be able to recover it before they sell it to the next purchaser. So some organisations don't put any voids and bad debts in on shared ownership. Some put a tiny percentage. It's up to how your own organisation deals with shared ownership losses.
Okay, so let's take it out. That's good. We're not doing any further staircasing, and then our rent we're looking at here is what rent setting we've got. Make sure we've got 2.75. 2.75 of the unsold equity, which is displayed underneath. No rent on the first homes, and the standard, you know. And
if you scroll a bit further down, Andrew, you've got how to deal with the service charges.
Yep. Okay. Do you want to explain that? Here we go.
Yeah. So should I make my service charges equal my service costs on all of them? I would say yes. So the first tick box is make service charges equal costs, and on your shared ownership, you haven't got it, Andrew. So you tick it on.
Yeah.
So that effectively generates a service charge of £23 a week, and then the box directly underneath that is this included in the rent or not included in the rent. affordables that would be included in the rent. The first homes is irrelevant. So you can leave that. I would leave those both at nothing.
Yeah.
Just to show that they are different, because there's no, the recovery of any estate charges and everything are outside the realms of the sale.
Yeah, sure.
And then on the service charges here, that would be included. So that £23 a week is effectively what you're recovering from the tenant, which would include a portion which is set aside for management. Is that right, John?
Yeah, management and maintenance.
Yeah.
So is it enough money, basically? That's I think there's service charges need a whole lot of scrutiny if they're to work effectively. And that row that says make service charges always equal cost, don't automatically tick it. Ask your organization, are we putting 10% admin charge for us doing the paperwork on top of service charges? Because if you are, you need to put a cross in that box and then type in.
So do you want to do that, Andrew?
Under service charges, what your income, what your required service charge is.
So if you could demonstrate that, Andrew, if you take the tick off the shared ownership above, yeah?
Yeah.
And then you, now that £23 is still there, but you can now change it to whatever you want it to be. Tip the triangle and then.
So if you needed, if you needed, yeah, typically 10%. So say you needed, yeah.
It's going to be £23 plus £2.30, isn't it?
Yeah, so
£25.20.
Yeah.
And I would, in the user comments, put in there what you've done.
Yeah, yeah.
I always try to encourage everybody, because what happens is these appraisals are looked at by several people over a period of time, and put in the user comments, because it will put a marker in that there is a user comment, and then there's no disguising how you arrived at those numbers.
Okay. So we're running out of time. We're coming up to 11 o'clock. I can see people starting to tail off. Have we answered this yet, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think great. So let's try and get through a couple more. Does any of the panelists need to go straight away, or are we happy to just stay on for a bit more Q&A? Okay, let's do this. So thank you again, Vikesh Patel. Thank you for engagement. By doing this approach, will it give us the correct residual value for shared ownership, or will it depend on the internal calculation? Happy to pick this point outside of the meeting, as we have a formula to calculate residual value, and Vikesh has put
Andrew, just stay still.
The value down. Just had a look at our formula for residual value.
No, we can answer that because we tested that. It will pick up the discount of the value and take that. You can see it here.
Sorry.
Okay. And would the residual value be the same for first homes, or is this an internal decision to take?
That's the question me and Paul were discussing beforehand. You know, from a land buyer's position, which is my background, what value do you use? Would you use? I mean, you have to provide 25% of any large scheme. Is there a number on that, John?
In terms of what? Sorry, Andrew.
Defining when first homes start.
Is it for a number of units? Is it over 50 units, 20 units, 30 units?
No, it's where the Section 106 would apply in terms of a threshold with a planning authority.
So if the threshold was 30% affordable units, or 40% on a particular scheme, so if it was 100 units, 30%, 30 units, 25% of those 30 units will have to be at first homes.
Yes.
So the question comes then, the value of those are 20 or 30% discounted in a land value.
Yeah.
So when the private developer would be looking at the scheme, they would have to discount that by whatever the guidance of the local authority is on the discount.
Yeah. So
there's a little bit more, even more variables in viability, which is there are, but this is taking a hit from the private developer. Although, interesting, when you run the model like that, the first homes product is probably more valuable to the private developer than the affordable rent. So
Yeah.
therefore, the actually offers are going to be higher. So it gives you more coffers money to the private developer.
Because we're typically seeing social rent around 50% of market value, and that's a very broad assumption.
Yeah.
And we're typically seeing shared ownership around 70-75%. So this is on a par with what might be offered for shared ownership.
And Andrew, can you share your screen again, please, so we can just answer Andy's question? It's a very quick thing.
Andy's question is, how do you deal with the £500 per year for 10-year maintenance allowance, as this is a cost to the association and not recovered?
So under the allowances there, Andrew.
Hang on, Paul, stop. But this is the point. The new lease says you can put it in the service costs.
No, Andrew, this is about the maintenance charge. You can't do that. So if you go
Right.
to rent allowances.
Hang on, Paul. John, this is what we were talking about in his presentation.
The lease actually says the management and maintenance should be wrapped up in a service cost.
Yeah,
So,
but the government have dictated on low start or 10% ones that the organization is liable for the £500 for the first 10 years.
Yeah.
So under maintenance, so if you turn the triangle on maintenance, please.
yeah, but Paul, this is the whole conversation.
Okay, let's just show how you could do it in Proval. So
Yeah.
if you set it 1 to 10.
Yeah. But the whole conversation we're saying is.
And then there's £500 for the first 10 years, and then nothing afterwards. And you just wanted to know, how do I set it if that's what I want?
Yeah, that's where you just set it. But when we look to the new lease, it says standard maintenance can be included in the service cost, which is.
I think that
remember, there is a very specific thing for the 10% start.
Yeah, I think there's a conflict there that needs clarifying. Yeah.
No, yeah. So we believe, and what will be looked at is that even if you're doing the 10%, you can put the £500 into the service cost for the 10 years.
No, because the organization is required to pay it.
No, right. Thanks, Paul. That's the whole point of this webinar, was to discuss that.
There is a conflict, and I think you need to find out from your FD as to how you need to tackle it.
Yeah, and I think people need to clear this up with Homes England on the new model of shared ownership, and also what it says in the lease. But in terms of modelling your general shared ownership, it's clear that your management costs should be in your service cost stroke charge.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Strong opinions, strong views, and you know, these are grey areas, and they do have these sort of areas where there's a lot of different conflicting information. So I would love to follow this up and clarify this with Homes England if we can. And if you can and you're listening here, please feel free to do the same, especially if you're a Homes England partner. Right, so it looks like we've run out of questions, and we have pretty much wrestled this topic very thoroughly. It's now 11:04, so it's time to say goodbye. Like I said, the recording is going to be available on our website. You're all going to get the slides and the information and the additional handout. So it's goodbye from us for the summer. We will be back in September with a whole new range of webinars and programs, and hopefully this nice new glossy news broadcast that I keep promising. And it's actually very difficult to achieve technically without spending 25 grand on streaming software. But I will have it up and running. Thank you so much, John Stevens. Absolutely brilliant to hear from you. Brilliant to hear our technical guru, Paul Christensen, and of course, Andrew, our head of consultancy.
Have a great summer, everybody.
We wave goodbye and stop sharing the screen, Andrew.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Stop sharing screen. Sorry. Oh, hang on. There you go. Ah!
All right. Yeah. So goodbye, everyone, and please stay in touch with us.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.